Welcome to Tech with Kaushik. This is part 7 of our complete practice question series for the AZ-305 Microsoft Certified Solutions Architect Expert exam. Choose your answer before the timer ends, then review the correct answer, explanation, and exam tip. Let us begin part 7. Proceed to question number 277. The topic here is Cosmos DB design. Scenario. A globally distributed content platform needs a JSON document database with a SQL-like query language, multi-region active writes, and predictable low-latency reads. Which database should be selected? Choice A, Azure Cosmos DB for NoSQL. Choice B, Azure SQL database with active georeplication. Choice C, Azure SQL database hyperscale. Choice D, Azure Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL. The best answer is option A, Azure Cosmos DB for NoSQL. Here is the technical justification. Cosmos DB for NoSQL supports SQL-like queries over JSON, multi-region writes, tunable consistency, and globally distributed low-latency reads. The incorrect choices fail for the following reasons. B. Active georeplication uses one writable primary rather than native multi-region active writes. C. Hyperscale is a relational SQL database tier and does not provide Cosmos DB multi-master semantics. D. Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL is a distributed relational PostgreSQL service and is not the NoSQL SQL API design described. Remember this distinction for the exam. Multi-region writes plus document queries and low latency point to Cosmos DB for NoSQL. Let us work through question number 278. Begin by examining the scenario. A production MySQL workload will run on Azure Database for MySQL Flexible Server. It requires zone-redundant high availability with automatic failover, and the company wants the least expensive compute tier that supports that configuration. Which compute tier should be recommended? Compare the following options. Choice A, burstable. Choice B, general purpose. Choice C, memory optimized. The correct answer is option B, general purpose. This is correct because zone-redundant high availability is supported for production-oriented general purpose and memory optimized tiers. General purpose is the lower-cost qualifying tier. A. Burstable is intended for low-cost workloads without the required production high availability configuration. C. Memory optimized supports high availability but costs more and is unnecessary without a memory-intensive requirement. When high availability excludes burstable, general purpose is the cost-optimized default unless memory demand requires memory optimized. Question number 279. Now, this question moves us into ExpressRoute design. A company needs a managed global transit network with regional presence in 3 strategic Azure regions. The design must connect several ExpressRoute circuits, support site-to-site VPN branches, and minimize the number of managed hubs while keeping those 3 regional entry points. Complete the virtual WAN design. Statement 1. Deploy the blank virtual hubs. Choose between 1, 2, 3, or 4. Statement 2. Use the blank virtual WAN SKU. Choose between basic or standard. The answer to the first statement is 3. One hub in each required regional entry point satisfies the 3-region latency requirement with a minimum hub count. The answer to the second statement is standard. Standard is required for ExpressRoute connectivity, transitive routing, and advanced VPN capabilities. A useful examination rule is this. Virtual WAN basic is limited. ExpressRoute and transitive multi-hub designs require standard. Question number 280. Consider this scenario. A line of business web app currently accepts organizational accounts from only its home Microsoft intratenant. The business wants employees from a second tenant to sign in directly through their own tenant. Which application configuration change is required? Review the options. Option A. Configure the Microsoft Intra Provisioning Service only. Option B. Enable pass-through authentication and change the endpoint. Option C. Change supported account types to allow multiple organizational directories and use a multi-tenant sign-in endpoint. Option D. Microsoft intra-join the user's devices. In this case, select option C. Change supported account types to allow multiple organizational directories and use a multi-tenant sign-in endpoint. The requirement is satisfied because a multi-tenant supported account type changes the app audience, so identities from other organizational directories can obtain tokens. The sign-in endpoint must also support multiple tenants. Now consider why the remaining options are unsuitable. A. Provisioning synchronizes assignments or accounts, but does not change a single tenant application's token audience. B. Pass-through authentication concerns validation against on-premises AD and does not make the application multi-tenant. D. Device join does not alter application registration tenancy. The key takeaway is supported account types determine which tenants can authenticate to an application. The next item is question number 281. Review the situation. A freight management platform uses separate Azure services for order intake, invoicing, warehouse allocation, and dispatch. Each service must continue operating independently when another component is temporarily unavailable. The services exchange durable XML command messages that must be processed asynchronously. Which Azure service should you recommend as the enterprise message broker? Available choices. Choice A, Azure Traffic Manager. Choice B, Azure Notification Hubs. Choice C, Azure Service Bus. Choice D, Azure Application Gateway. The required response is option C, Azure Service Bus. Azure Service Bus provides durable enterprise queues and topics that decouple distributed services and support reliable asynchronous command processing. Message payloads can contain XML data. The other choices do not satisfy the requirement because A. Azure Traffic Manager performs DNS-based traffic routing and does not broker application messages. B. Azure Notification Hubs sends push notifications to mobile devices rather than coordinating backend transactions. D. Azure Application Gateway is a regional layer, 7 web traffic load balancer, and does not provide durable messaging. Keep this examination point in mind. Use Service Bus for reliable enterprise commands, queues, transactions, sessions, or publish-subscribe workflows. Now consider question number 282. We are now working with messaging architecture. A telemetry processing solution has several producer services that submit XML work items to stateless worker services. The solution requires a durable asynchronous queue, must support a large backlog, and does not require sessions, transactions, duplicate detection, topics, or subscription filters. Messaging costs must be minimized. Which Azure service should you recommend? The options are Option A, Azure Queue Storage. Option B, Azure Application Gateway. Option C, Azure Notification Hubs. Option D, Azure Traffic Manager. The appropriate choice is Option A, Azure Queue Storage. The key reason is Azure Queue Storage provides a durable, highly scalable, low-cost queue for asynchronous communication between distributed components. It fits workloads that do not require the advanced broker features of Service Bus. The remaining options are incorrect because B. Azure Application Gateway routes HTTP and HTTPS traffic and does not store work messages. C. Azure Notification Hubs targets push notifications to client devices. D. Azure Traffic Manager routes users between endpoints through DNS and is not a message queue. Exam tip. Choose queue storage for simple, economical work queues. Choose Service Bus when advanced messaging semantics are required. Next, question number 283. Scenario. A ticketing company will deploy a single Azure SQL database in a region that supports availability zones. The database must use synchronous replicas so that committed transactions are not lost during failover, and it must remain available if one zone becomes unavailable. The company wants the least costly option among the listed choices that satisfies all requirements. Which deployment option should you recommend? Choices. Option A, Azure SQL Database Standard. Option B, Azure SQL Managed Instance General Purpose. Option C, Azure SQL Database Business Critical. Option D, Azure SQL Database Basic. In this case, select Option C, Azure SQL Database Business Critical. The reasoning is as follows. The business-critical tier uses multiple synchronous replicas and can be configured for zone redundancy. This architecture supports automatic failover without losing committed transactions and protects the database from a zone outage. The alternatives can be eliminated because A. The standard DTU tier does not provide the business-critical synchronous replica architecture required by the scenario. B. SQL-managed instance is a different deployment model and does not meet the requirement for a single Azure SQL database. D. The basic tier does not provide the required zone-resilient high-availability architecture. Remember this distinction for the exam. For low-latency OLTP with synchronous replicas and zone-resilient failover, evaluate Azure SQL Business Critical. Apply precise reasoning to question number 284. Next, we enter the topic of identity governance. Analyze the scenario before evaluating the choices. A research portal is registered as a single-tenant application in one Microsoft intratenant. Researchers from a partner organization's tenant must use their existing identities to access the portal. Access must be requested through an approval workflow, expire automatically, and be reviewed periodically. The application will remain single-tenant. Which Microsoft Intra capability should you recommend to onboard and govern the partner users? Evaluate each option against the stated requirement. Consider option A, Microsoft Intra ID Protection. Consider option B, Microsoft Intra Entitlement Management. Consider option C, Microsoft Intra Privileged Identity Management. Consider option D, Microsoft Intra Pass-Through Authentication. The best answer is option B, Microsoft Intra Entitlement Management. Here is the technical justification. Entitlement management can onboard external users through access packages and apply approval, expiration, assignment, and access review policies while the users authenticate with identities from their home organization. The incorrect choices fail for the following reasons. A. ID protection detects and responds to identity risk, but does not provision governed external access. C. Privileged identity management governs privileged role activation rather than general partner access to an application. D. Pass-through authentication validates hybrid identities against an organization's on-premises directory and does not onboard users from a partner tenant. Use entitlement management access packages to govern the full life cycle of partner and guest access. You have completed Part 7 of the AZ-305 practice series. Continue your preparation by opening the complete playlist and watching the remaining parts in sequence. Please like this video, subscribe to Tech with Kaushik, and enable notifications for more certification exam preparation content. Share your score, questions, or feedback in the comments. Thank you for watching. See you in the next part.